Welcome to episode 141 of the Alone Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about some standouts in last night's matchup between San Jose and LA. And surprisingly, San Jose broke through yesterday. They've actually gotten in the win column as of late after starting off to a bad start to start the season. And they've gotten in the win column. And yesterday they won 7-2 and they scored a touchdown. They looked really good yesterday. They played against a decently good team. LA's been a little inconsistent, but they're supposed to be improving and getting better over the course of time, especially this year. I thought they would take a step ahead, but so far it's been a little inconsistent. But on San Jose's side, we'll start with there. And Macklin Celebrini had a 3-point game. And who else to start with but him? He was just all over the place in this game. And I noticed him right from the get-go on draws, his ability to control the puck, his ability to use deception. I felt like all the elements in his game were there that were reminiscent of why he went first overall in the draft this year. And he looked really good as a scorer. His instincts were really noticeable. I always noticed his ability to use a little bit of deception in his shoulders. I remember writing about this in one of my Substack releases recently, where he does a really good job using those shoulder fakes and using his shoulders to add a deceptive element to his puck handling. And I feel like that allows him to be able to control space a little bit better. And Celebrini is a guy who's really skilled. He's really deceptive with the puck on his stick. He's still trying to adapt to the NHL game and has just fit in seamlessly, though. He's fit in really well as their top line center and has really fit that role really nicely so far, and I feel like he's made a really nice adjustment there, and it's been almost seamless in terms of his ability to transition to the NHL. And yeah, nothing else really needs to be said about him. I feel like I've talked about him so much, whether it be in articles, podcasts, and newsletters. I just don't have much else to say about him. I feel like I've talked about him so much. But William Eklund, who's actually on his line in this game, looked really good as well. I really liked the step forward that William Eklund has been taking. I feel like in terms of his game, he's really pass first reminiscent, and his game is really reliant on his passing game. And that's a big standout quality when it comes to his game is his ability to make passes, his ability to find seams, his ability to make lateral plays with the puck, make little saucer passes in small areas. I feel like he's really well renowned as a passer, and his goal scoring at some point is going to take another level and hit another level because he's got really good scoring instincts, really underrated scoring instincts as well. I feel like his ability to read the rush, read off puck movement, his ability to find space in scoring areas and in interior space is really underrated when it comes to his ability. Sometimes don't notice it as much. And he's not a player who's well renowned around the NHL yet because yes, he's young. Yes, he's super skilled. Yes, he was a high draft pick, but in terms of San Jose, they haven't been a good team. So him being on a bad team, I feel like his little has added to his surprise a little bit thus far. I feel like last year he had a really good season. It was kind of a surprise to me they had that good of a season on a very bad team. And this year has been going really well for him. I feel like he's going to continue to take steps forward in his coming seasons in the NHL. Just looks overall like a really skilled player and just really fun to watch when he's at his best. Will Smith, who had 2 assists in this game, and looked real. His playmaking game was on all game. I felt like his passing game was on. That's the best attribute when it comes to his game. When he's making passes, when he's completing passes, when he's making tape to tape plays, when he's making heads up plays, it's a really good sign. And even if it's not translating to scoring right away, which yesterday it did, but if it's not translating to scoring, it's still a good sign that he's able to showcase those skills. But yesterday, 2 assists, really good game and was really impressed with him overall. I thought there are a lot of standout qualities in his game. And obviously, it's been a slower start for him, but I'd imagine he's going to stick for at least most of the season with San Jose. I don't really envision him going down to the Barracuda because he doesn't really need to play there. He's too skilled to play in the AHL. And I just feel like it's better for him to develop in the NHL because he can use that skill and try to learn ways to weaponize that skill. And at the same time, it's his first year of development. You don't want to mess around with him too much. And having that consistency with him playing on the wings in the NHL is going to benefit him in his first year in the league. And then Yaroslav Iskarov, ever since being called up, has played really well for them. I feel like he's made a really good adjustment. And I was kind of surprised he didn't make the team out of camp, but he's still on the team now, and that's what matters most is he's still there and he's playing some games. So I feel like the ceiling with Askarov is an impact level goalie who could be a starter for a very long time. And he's proven himself in the AHL. There's nothing else he really needs to do down there. It's just more a matter of how consistent can he be in the NHL at this point and how his NHL game really evolves from that. And usually goalies who translate from every single level, like he's translated from the KHL, or let me start back by the, the MHL U20, and then he translated to the KHL, and then he translated to the AHL, and then now he's translated to the NHL. So I feel like just in terms of that path that he's been on, you see a path of consistency. And the path of consistency, it makes it easier to evaluate some of these players because you can understand that they have a better shot at making it because they've been consistent at every level previously. So it's like, why would they stop being consistent now when at every level they've played consistently before, they've been super consistent. They've been there all the time and they've had really good numbers. So I feel like with Askarov, that's the biggest thing. It's just more a matter of time in terms of when he's able to become a starter and how consistent he can be at that role. But it's coming and it looks like sooner than we think. And then Timothy Liljegren had a good game as well. I was impressed with his mobility, and I've really liked his mobility ever since he was acquired from Toronto. And he's made a good fit, ironically, on the first unit power play. I feel like San Jose, they need a little bit more youth on their blue line and guys who can play top 4 minutes consistently. And Liljegren is one of those guys who fits that role really well. He can be a top 4D. He can be power play reliant, but he's not super heavily offensively oriented or gifted. But he's a good two-way transitional D. I feel like his ability up ice is really reliant on his puck skills and his feet and his ability to slice through defensemen that way. And he's really good maneuvering guys with his feet. It's been a strength of his ever since he was drafted. And so he's looked really good with San Jose thus far. He's been a really good fit in their system and their style of play. And then Jake Wallman, I wanted to talk about him. I've been really impressed with his game in San Jose. I honestly was not expecting the offense from him, but he's produced and he's on pace for over 50 points this year, which would be a career year for him. One of those guys who's just been a minute eating defenseman, has played a lot of ice time for them because of the trade from Detroit, where he was playing he was playing more along the lines of a number four, number five. Now in San Jose, he's kind of upped his role a little bit and he has more freedom to play however he wants. And I feel like that's attributed a lot to his offensive play and his ability to just be active all across the board offensively in transition, on rushes, in ozone play. I noticed a lot more elements firing in his game than I've ever seen before, and I've been really impressed with him. I feel like he's been arguably their best defenseman to start the season thus far, and we're about a quarter of the way through the NHL season. So by no means is it really a sample size anymore, and I feel like he's just been consistent. So it's been interesting to see. I've been really impressed with him, and I'm curious to see how the rest of the season goes for him over time as well. And then on LA side, there weren't too many, but I was really big fan of Brant Clark's game in this game. And I wrote about him today in my newsletter. I feel like Brant Clark has just taken that next step really well. And part of it has to do with Drew Doughty being injured, which is sort of, you could say, a blessing in disguise for Clark because it allowed him to get so much more ice time. And Clark has just been playing so well offensively and in transition. He's such an offensively oriented defenseman, but he's such a skilled playmaker, and he's so skilled with his edge work. His straight line speed and stride is a little awkward in terms of the knee bend and the flexion in his ankles, but I feel like with his edge work, that's where I notice him being able to beat guys the most is his outside edges and how he's able to utilize that to really slice and dice through guys. He's really, really skilled as an offensive defenseman, and he can play power play, he can quarterback, move across the line so effortlessly. Just really skilled with his feet, really skilled with mohawks, really skilled at being able to use some flair and deception within his feet as well. Not a ton. Like if I think of a guy who's really deceptive with his feet, I would think of Lane Hudson. I don't feel like Clark is that level of deception. I feel like Clark just uses it on occasion where he likes to throw in a mohawk pivot or two when the time is necessary and when the situation is right. I don't feel like he's the type of guy who's going to do that all the time. And Clark's a guy who likes efficiency in terms of his game and putting himself into space. And so he's really reliant on those aspects of his game when the time is necessary, and he doesn't do it all the time. But just really skilled defenseman, really fun to watch, and he's added a lot more offensive flair to his game this year, which is really good to see. Another guy who's on pace for over 50 points as a defenseman, so it's going to be interesting to see how his season goes the rest of the year and how it could change, how his role could change when Drew Doughty does get back. Adrian Kempe had a really good game, and I noticed his ability to move laterally on entries, his lateral play in neutral zone. I felt like was really noticeable. And again, San Jose is not the best in terms of their neutral zone forecheck, and then their entry denial play is not necessarily the best. So I feel like some of that he had a little bit more freedom in how he's able to move because of that. Because San Jose's reads are a little bit different from their high forwards, and some of their forwards aren't as instinctually gifted to read those situations. But with Kempe, he's a guy who can really slice through the neutral zone really well. He's an underrated offensive oriented player, and not necessarily the most defensive minded per se, but he relies a ton on his offensive game, and he's become a very productive player in the NHL for the Kings and just one of the league's underrated players in terms of production and from a production standpoint, generating goals. And he's going to maintain that consistency over time. Anze Kopitar, who's always played well against San Jose for a very long time, 2 points in his game, a goal and an assist. Just not much needs to be said about him. Two-way guy, shutdown role. He can play anywhere. He can play it all, and he can do it all. He can play late game, early game. He can play so many different situations that are beneficial first team. So he was really good all around as well. And then Mikey Anderson, I actually wanted to touch on him. I felt like this was one of his better showings too. And he's one of those younger defensemen who's kind of in that Alex Vlasic, trying to think of some other defensemen, Tia Samuelson realm where he's like a shutdown minded defenseman, but can incorporate some offense and some transition ability when necessary. I feel like that's a lot of quote unquote defensive minded defensemen nowadays where they're paid more for their defense, but in the modern day realm, you have to have some versatility. So you have to have transition play, and you have to be active on rushes. You have to be good with your feet, like those type of things. I feel like you have to have versatility in those things. You don't necessarily need to be a standout offensive D if you have a really good shutdown game. And that's again, that's what those defensemen are paid for. Like Samuelsons, the Vlasics, the Andersons now as well. And his game is large in part due to his shutdown play. That's a large portion of his game and what it's made off of. And he's really good at being able to shut entries down, shut rushes down. He's really good at using his feet. Not the most physical player, I'd say he's more physical when he's in D zone coverage situations, like swarm situations, like 5-man swarms where he's physical down low and deep in the zone. And when pressure needs to be applied, but I don't feel like he's necessarily the super and let me rephrase that. I don't feel like he's the most physical player on this decor, and he's not really physical at all. I feel like he's more reliant on his reads to be able to affect those components of the game, especially in D zone situations and being able to shut plays down off rush and those type of situations. So I had really good standouts all across the board throughout this game.